Okay, it's another day here, working on the van once again, trying to get things installed. I've got the diesel heater here now, and I've been trying to work out where to put that inside the van, which I'll show you in a second. I've got that kind of pretty much worked out, I think. But before I can put the diesel heater in, I've really got to get a floor installed in my van, so that's the thing that I'm going to be working on at the moment. And I've also got a box of goodies that's just arrived as well, so I'll show you the box of goodies in a minute as well. But first I'll show you what I'm doing. So this is the diamond plate that that came in my van, but it's pretty tarnished. And I've just been going around and just starting to polish it all up like this, using a drill just with a wheel in the end of it, which you can see there. And yeah, that's the first sort of stage of polishing it up. And it's coming along quite nicely. I'm pretty happy with it. It's quite a time-consuming job though, but I want it to look nice when it goes back in the van, so I'm going to continue to work on it until we sort of get it how we want it. And my box of goodies is just over here, so I'll show you what's in the box of goodies. So this is stuff that I've been waiting for ages. Gland for the roof for the solar panel, so that mounts on the roof upside down, keeps it nice and watertight. The wire comes in from the solar panel through that. Brackets holding the solar panel. It's all Rhino-Rack, all the stuff. It's quite cheap, not overly expensive, and good quality stuff, so I thought that it was worth spending the extra bit of money to buy some half decent Bluetooth controller for the Rhino-Rack solar charge controller, so I can control it all from my phone. EP2 charge controller, 40 amp, which is what I said I was going to buy, and this thing is just awesome. This compared to the toy that came with it, which I'll talk about a little bit later as well, this is just awesome. This is a proper charge controller. This is worth the money, I think. That was the most expensive part of this whole thing actually. It's a good few $100s worth of stuff there, but worth it. And then this is cabling, so really good quality cabling in here. And this is heavy, like it's quite amazing. You can just feel it, you know. It's this is the real deal. The cable that came with my solar panel was just pathetic compared to this stuff, really pathetic. And I'll do a comparison on that stuff as well and show you guys stuff. But yeah, pretty good, pretty happy to have this. So this means I can start getting my my setup ready and happening. So one thing's for sure, man, I'll be getting all that, definitely be getting all the solar stuff installed very shortly. I'm still going to need some more cables, but I'm starting to get there. I think I've got most of the stuff I need. It's a pretty hot day here today. It's a little bit windy, but it's certainly hot. So in here I've got the diesel heater. And the diesel heater here, that's the kind of plate that installs to the floor. And there's like a gasket, a rubber gasket in here as well. It's got to get installed. I'm going to install it just behind the seat here. It's probably the best place for it. This is the tank for it here. And the tank, I've decided I'm going to install it just here so that I can basically slide the door open and fill the tank, you know, from a Bowser. You know, diesel Bowser basically, without having to muck around too much. I'll probably box this thing in a little bit as well, but for now it can get installed there, and then I'll build the boxing and stuff around it, because I have some other things that I want to do. Like I sort of have some grand ideas of having some sort of you know, like an airline kind of travel tray kind of fold up thing that folds up and around and over to the top of the chair, so that you could sit here and eat and have the table kind of fold up from the side over into here. So maybe I'm going to do something like that, but we'll see. Anyway, it's all just ideas at the moment. At least I've got the diesel heat. I've worked out where it's got to go. But I need to put a floating floor in here. I've got to cut the diamond plate. I've got to put the diamond plate in. The diamond plate is going to go back in the back again, because I want that to be a waterproof fill, pretty much a waterproof area. So if things get wet and they go in there, it won't matter. Also, if I put the bike in there, it won't matter. And then it'll be a floating floor on this side of this front side. And I've just put at the moment I've just got the ply in here with insulation underneath it, because I wanted the floor to be nice and flat, and obviously in the back of a van nothing's flat, and it needed to be flat to mount the flooring. So the seat will have to come out, the bed will have to come out, we'll mount the floor, then then we can start doing some of this wiring, and hopefully the rest of the wiring will arrive shortly as well, which would be great. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the excitement of the day. You know, there's plenty to do. It's going to take me a few hours to get this diamond plating cleaned up. I've got like a polishing wheel, which I'm also going to use, and I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of a shine on it. My lady's saying, oh, that's not going to last, it won't stay shiny, but you know, I just couldn't put it in the van how it is. It's just too messy. And what I may do, I might even spray a coat of clear coat over the top of it once I've shined it up, just to try and protect it a little bit, so it looks nice and stays looking nice for a little bit longer. Anyway, they're my ideas. I'm going to carry on now, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Well, another day's come and gone, and I'm back onto the job here again with this diamond plate. It's a huge job. It just took hours and hours yesterday to sort of tune through it and start cleaning it up. I think it's worth it. You know, my lady's saying it's probably not worth it, but I still think it's worth it. So I'll show you what I've done, where I've got to, how the wheels are getting on. They're getting pretty wasted pretty quickly. I might have to go and buy another one today to finish this job maybe. Anyway, without further ado, I'll show you what's happening. So this is where I've got to with it so far. I've pretty much done most of the front edges. I've still got a little bit of work to do, but it's, you know, it's just a tarnishing like this and there. So I've still got to get rid of this. I only have to do to pretty much my lines here. But yeah, it's taking its toll on the old grinder wheels, or not grinder wheels. If you call these brush wheels. You can see there, you know, the size that they start at and how they end up, and they just basically get worn out by this job. I just can't handle it. Here's another smaller one. And I've got a couple more here. I've got one on there, which is a slightly newer one. Hopefully I can get most of this job knocked out with that, and if I can't, I'll resort to using one of these. And then I've got to cut this plating across here so that it'll fit in my van, and go and buy some floating floor and put the floating floor into the back of the van. So that's the job. I don't think I'm going to polish it too much more than this. I think this is enough. I think it kind of looks way better than it did, and I'm pretty happy with it. I could spend a lot more time polishing up more, but it's just going to be in the back of the van. I've already spent too much time on it, so it's time to just get it cut and get it mounted, get it into the back of the van. I finally got the diamond plate cut. It was a bit of a hassle. I had a portable angle grinder, not a portable angle grinder, battery driven angle grinder, and it just wouldn't cut the thing properly. It just kept dying, the battery kept dying. It's good for, I guess, for small cuts, but no good for anything decent. So I've bought a battery powered one instead, which has done the job now, and I've managed to cut it. I've got a couple more cuts to make on some other bits of steel. I guess the battery powered one's probably good for doing little jobs, but it was certainly no good for doing bigger jobs. I'll show you what I was using. So this is the unit that I've bought to do the job, and this did the job really nicely. It's only a small one, but it's good enough for my needs. And this is the battery powered one that I had, Ryobi, with one of these discs, and that was just pretty pathetic really. I mean, this thing just overheats and turns itself off as soon as you make a cut more than about 4 inches long, so that was pretty useless. So I wouldn't recommend one of those if you're ever planning on getting one. That came as part of a kit that I got with a battery drill and an impact hammer, and the battery drill and the impact hammer have been really good, but that thing was useless. It really was just a toy. So the diamond plate's done and it's in. I haven't mounted it in here yet. I've got to cut a little bit more off it just in these corners here. There's it's not going to sit nicely, and I'm probably going to have to trim my board across here a little bit as well so it sits nice and flush. But the next thing to do, I think, is going to be to take the seats out of here. Get the seat out, not the seats, the seat. There's only one seat, but I've got to take that seat out. And I've got some floating floor in the back of my car, which is ready to go in here, and I've got some underlay kind of stuff that goes in here as well. So I think I'm going to put that floating floor in first, and then I'm going to come back to this job when I'm finished, because I have some ideas around this that I might implement as well. So there's my floating floor, and that should be quite nice once we get that in. You can see the diamond plate sort of poking through, and I've got a few holes in the floor here that I've got to sort of cut. So these are the floors, these are the holes where the seat actually, it has like little plates in the bottom, and they have to sit into these holes. So I've got to cut these holes everywhere. So I've got to cut holes everywhere in the flooring so that the seat can sit flush. But yeah, it's pretty easy to do. It's not that big a deal. The main thing's going to be cutting around things like this. So obviously we don't want to make a bodgy mess of that. We want to cut, you know, nice little cut out. So we want this flooring. It wasn't so important to have the seams perfect, but the other flooring that we're going to put in now is definitely important that we get the seams right. So everything has to be spot on. So what we've got here is a bit of wind blowing things around. Actually, aside from that, we've got some laminate flooring here. So I chose this laminate flooring simply because you get more of it. So the real cheap stuff you get 1.5 square meters or something like that, and this stuff you get basically double that amount, which is way better. And it's waterproof. That's the other thing. I think it's important to have waterproof when you're doing this kind of thing. So this is the flooring here. It's basically Bunnings flooring anyway, laminate flooring, 25-year guarantee, residential warranty. I don't know if that if residential warranty is covered by a van. I would imagine it probably isn't, but anyway, whatever. Water resistant, as I said, and I reckon, you know, 2.694 meters squared, so 8 boards a box. I reckon we're going to probably use, well, we're not going to go right through into the boot of the van with this, but we're probably going to use I don't know, best part of a couple of boxes, I guess, to do this job. Well, it's another day 3 I think now, back into this job again, doing the flooring. It's consumed a fair bit of time yesterday, and today's consumed a fair bit of time as well, mainly because you've got to cut around, you know, lots of awkward shapes. So I'll show you what I've done and how I'm doing it. So I've got sort of, you know, got the basics in there, got the flooring cut around the back well. Now remember that I've got diamond plate going in the back of here as well, so it wasn't necessary for me to be really bringing everything through to the back, but the diamond plate doesn't cover some of the sides. It sort of comes in here and there are gaps in it, and I didn't want that, so basically I've done it so that, you know, so that at least will be some flooring in the back. And I just made these cardboard cutouts like this, and then just transfer that obviously onto the piece of wood before I cut it. It's not perfect, you know, but it's good enough. And the thing is that, you know, you could fill all the edges later anyway. You'd fill them with silicone, and you've got to remember that you're going to have insulation that goes over the top of here that's going to cover any gaps or anything that you have. So I'm not worried about perfection here around the edges. I mean, get it close, but it doesn't have to be perfect, because, as I say, once the wall's gone, you won't see those gaps anyway, or any gaps that are there. The main thing is to stop, you know, you want a good moisture barrier happening in here. So I'm onto my second box. The second 2 boxes are going to be plenty to do everything I want. The only other complication that I've got aside from those footwells there is obviously these little cutout things that are here, and these holes in the floor. So these holes are where the seat has to sit, so you know, there's bolt holes here that go through to the bottom, and I need to have the holes, so I'm having to marry those holes up into the boards and cut them out to suit. And I'm using the renovator tool here to do that job. That makes this job nice and easy. That's a pretty handy tool to have. Aside from that, I had a little piece of wire. This is the wire that I was using to, you know, get my shapes. So that's kind of bent to the shape there, and then I could just use that, transfer that onto the cardboard, check the cardboard's sort of correct. That's quite a good way to do it, I found. Well, good way for me anyway. There's probably other ways to do it, but that's how I do it. And I'll show you the other tools I'm using. So jigsaw, sanders, circular saw, and most importantly a drop saw. You really need a drop saw. Without the drop saw, this job will be quite difficult. So if you haven't got one, you need to get one or borrow one or do whatever you need to do, because it makes the job easy to cut everything nice and square. And that's pretty much where everything's at the moment. There's plenty more work to do. You know, I mean, the weather's not looking the best today. It's normally pretty sunny here today. Looks like there's going to be a storm. So I don't know whether I'm going to get this finished before the storm comes through. I hope that I can, because I'd really like to get the seats back in here. I'd like to get the diesel heater in, because this weekend I'd like to try and take the van out and have another sleep in it, see what it's like with the diesel heater in there overnight, whether it gets too cool. The thing is, here now, of course, in Queensland, it's starting to get warmer at night. You know, a few weeks ago it was still quite cold, but last night it was quite warm. I don't know what it's going to be like tonight, but you know, it can change. It's up and down a little bit at the moment. It'd certainly be good to have the heater. I could set the temperature, set it on the thermostat, set it for, you know, I don't know, 18 degrees or 20 degrees or whatever I feel like, and it will hold that temperature all night, which would be perfect. So I've finally got the floor installed. I've still got to put the diamond plate down properly. There's a couple of modifications I need to make, but we're getting too late in the day to do that stuff now, so that'll be tomorrow's job. And we can start installing the diesel heater tomorrow as well. So everything else, I'm pretty happy with it all. Wasn't too much trouble. Just really cutting around the wheel wells was probably the most pain in the neck bit, but not drastically bad. So I'll show you the result anyway. So that's the floor installed. I've got an edging that I'm going to put on along here, like a piece of angle iron, which will clamp that down. It's just pretty much floating in there at the moment. The holes in the floor obviously are where the seat goes. Behind that will be the diesel heater, so I've got to mount the diesel heater before I mount the seat back in here again. The seams are all pretty good. I'm pretty happy with all of it really. The diamond plates in there, it's looking pretty good, but just sitting there. It's a diamond plate from this angle. So I needed the floating floor to come through, you know, around the sides and stuff, just because the diamond plate doesn't go all the way up to the edges and it will look a bit funny otherwise. So what I've got to do is I've got to go along this edge here and basically cut the wood back a little bit so that this edging sits nice and flush. So that's the next job to do, is to work out, you know, I mean, I probably need to take a few mils off here. And the diamond plate in the corners here, I don't know, whoever made this never really made it really nice, so I need to get in here and just cut a little bit more, or grind a little bit more off those corners, and then this will all be sitting down nice and flush and it'll have a nice edging on it. Yeah, and that's pretty much it really. Screw it down. This will actually get screwed down onto the floor. I think we had some holes in that anyway, but you know, it probably only needs a couple of fastening screws in there and that's it. It shouldn't need too much holding this in place. It's pretty heavy, it's not floating around or moving around or anything. I'll probably put four or six screws in it or something like that. And that's pretty much the job. So it's all one step closer to reality and to being finished. I'll be really happy to get the rest of the interior in. The next installation after the diesel heater is going to be my solar panels, my roof box and things like that. I need to get all that on. I need to get all the wiring in here basically, because the wiring stops me from doing all the other things that I want to do, all the lining of the roof and the other bits and pieces. I can't really do that without that. Without that wiring in there and working out, you know, I might put some spare wires in here as well, or put some bits of rope in here or something, so if I even need to pull any more wires through, I could do it once it's actually all together. But I'm pretty happy with the day's work really. It's taken longer than what I wanted it to, but that's always the case. All of these jobs are always like that, you know. You start the job and you start working on it, you think to yourself, oh, in a few hours I'll have that done. It's never a few hours, it's always, you know, if you say 2 hours, it's always 4. And I guess that's why when people are doing these jobs as a living, they say, you know, when they quote jobs, it's like you're always told to double your quote, because your time always is more than what you suspect it to be. There's always some unforeseen thing that you don't take into account that you needed to and didn't. Anyway, it's another day done. Talk to you guys again soon. Finally got the diamond plate and the flooring finished now, and I'm about to start installing the diesel heater. Seems kind of weird to be installing a diesel heater when you know, when it's so sunny and it's so warm at the moment, but you know, you'd understand if it gets to night over here, it can get pretty cold at night. It doesn't get cold at night in the summer, of course, but during the winter, during these sort of seasons, we're just out of winter now, and it does get quite cool. Anyway, I've got it in there. I'll show you what I've done, and I've installed a light as well to kind of fill up a bit of a gap, which has worked out quite well. So that's the diamond plate. I had a bit of a gap under here, and I've got a LED light in here now instead, a LED light strip, and I've run the wiring. I haven't run it all the way back to the turning batteries or anything yet, because they're not installed yet, and just been tidying all of that up, and I'm pretty happy with the whole thing. It's looking pretty good. I just used a couple of galv bolts or galv screws to screw it all down so that it's nice and tight. Had to do a little bit of cutting along the back of here, as I said yesterday, and I'll show you this. I'll show you the setup with the lights here. I'll have some sort of switch inside so you can turn it on, or maybe I'll even trigger it to some door switch or something like that, and there it is. So the whole thing lights up when you switch it on. And I'm going to be installing further lights up underneath the bed here as well. on each side, at this side and also at the other side. And the reason I want to do that is just simply I'm going to have a lot of stuff in the boot, and I want to be able to get in there and see it at night time. And obviously having a bed above it, there's not really a typical way to kind of look down there at the moment, and having the light out the back will be quite nice. So if it's night time and I want to sit outside with a table or something like that, get eaten by mosquitoes, then I can do that with some light, which will be quite nice, and they'll consume very little power, which will be awesome. I've got to measure the bit of diamond plate that I've got left too, because what I'm thinking about doing is, well, obviously I'm always wanted to get rid of these panels anyway, but if the diamond plating would fit on here, I would put the diamond plating on here. I'm not sure if it's quite big enough, but I'll measure that up soon and have a look. And now I'm going to start installing the diesel heater. So diesel heater's got to go behind the seat, so I've got the seat there, and the diesel heater will get installed just at the back here between these, just behind the seat. Basically there's a nice clear space there to mount it, and I'll build some sort of box or something over it, so that we don't want it getting hot and having bedding or clothing falling down on top of it. That would be no good. So anyway, I'll get it installed and get it sorted. The bed sits pretty close to the seat sits pretty close to the bed, so we shouldn't have too many problems. Man, it's been a long day. It's taken ages just to get this job done. I've got the diesel heater, the main part of it, installed now. It took a while to cut all the holes and get it all lined up and make sure nothing's touching it, because it does get hot. I don't like catching my floor on fire or anything silly like that. So I'll show you how I've got it sort of installed. I've done the installation on the other side of the van and obviously inside here, and the next thing to do is to start connecting all the vents, work out where they're going to go. I can only roughly do that at the moment because I don't have everything in here that I want, but roughly do the vents. And the fuel and the fuel pump, because I haven't sorted that out yet, and I haven't sorted out where I'm going to put the fuel tank, whether I'm going to put it in the side door here or in the boot, I'm not sure. So one of my ideas is maybe to have it sitting just in here beside the seat. And it'll be in a box. I'd put it in a box if I did do that, and then I can just open the door and I can just fill it. I could build a little drip tray or something for the ground, just in case anything dripped. These are pretty tight, I think, pretty airtight. They seem to have an airtight seal, so I think once the diesel's in here you wouldn't smell it at all. But I don't want diesel smell inside the van, obviously, so I have to be a little bit careful how I do this. That's my hose coming up through the floor which would go to the pump. That's the unit installed there. It's installed on the floor. That's the inlet side. The outlet side goes to the vents, and you can just vent that off anywhere you want. I think that's probably good enough. So this is the back of the van. You can see the diesel heater sitting in there at the end. And I could maybe mount the fuel tank in this side. But it's kind of under the bed, and I don't know if I want it there. Just have a look. Yeah, see, it's not a very good fit there. Wouldn't really work. I'd have to, I'd really have to do something about it in there. Yeah, no good. It's going to be no good. I think the front is the best place. Well, here we are again at the van. Another big day's work ahead of me. I've started doing a few bits and pieces. Today's goal really is to install the solar panels and get the solar happening. I've got the diesel heater in here, as I said, last time sort of had a bit of a chat. And I thought I'd just show you a few of the things that I've got and that I'm doing and how I'm going to do things, or how I'm thinking to do things, because often I change my mind on the fly anyway. But anyway, here we go. So that's my fridge that I've got to install in my cabinet. It's a little bit bigger than the one that I was thinking, but I'm thinking on the top of my bench I'm going to have an opening. I'm going to make the top of the bench so it just lifts up. And then I'll also put it on slides as well, so if there's stuff on the top of the bench I can slide it out. It's going to be an interesting thing to make, but I think it will work well. You can see the diesel heater tank there. We've had this running, well, only once really as a test, but no diesel smell at all in the van, which is great. You can't smell it when you're in here, even on a hot day. You just don't smell it. It's perfect. I mean, that's a temporary kind of the way I've got that mounted in there at the moment is kind of temporary, because obviously it will still go there, but I'll do it a little bit better than that. And I've got, you know, wood to go behind the bed, and you know, bolts and things to go in here. Man, this thing pumps out some heat. This was crazy. Like, I've just got the one outlet under here at the moment, but I'm going to have an outlet that goes out under the bed as well, just so that I can aerate my mattress and stuff with a little bit of heat once in a while if I need to, if it rains a lot or something like that. I've got one of my Agm batteries over there, 120 ampere hour. I've got 2 of those. That's just sitting there, just temporary as well at the moment, just so that I could get some power to the actual diesel heater. The joke, of course, is that we didn't need the diesel heater. We installed it and we just didn't need it. We went out on the weekend and didn't need it at all because it was too warm. And you can see at the moment we've got pretty warm temperatures here, so 27 inside the van at the moment. I mean, it's going to be hot in here in the summer if I don't solve this insulation issue. I think actually what I'm going to have to do is I think I'm going to have to buy more of this stuff. This stuff's really, really, really good. It's not going to absorb moisture. It's an XPS panel. I've just got to find a way to buy it at a reasonable price. But I think that's the answer to insulating the van. I don't think there's really many other really effective ways to do it, aside from maybe spray foaming. And see the problem with the spray foam is you can buy, and I'll show you the kits that you can buy. You can buy a kit for the spray foam, but it's, you know, it's like $600. And I reckon I probably don't need too many more panels, and I wouldn't need panels as thick as that. The thickness of those panels is perfect for the walls, but for the ceiling I'd need something a little bit thinner than that. But that stuff's really effective. Like, you can feel it. I mean, you can put your hand on it when it's outside, and it's just cool that this doesn't get hot. Where everything else gets warm, that doesn't. So it's awesome stuff. I'll show you under the van. So this is the diesel heater installation from underneath the van, and you can see the inlet there, and I've got the exhaust sort of pointed towards the back of the van over the back there. Now you can get an extension pipe apparently for these. You can get a longer pipe which will take it right out, completely out the side of the van. And apparently that's a good way to do it. I haven't sealed my holes under here yet, neither. I just cut them with I cut the holes where the pipes come through with a, step drill, which was perfect. But there's a couple of things that I've learnt since doing this, and one of them is, is these extension pipes for the exhaust, so you can get the exhaust right out from under the van. Not that I've ever smelled any smell at all when I've been burning it, but still it'd be good to vent it right out underneath the van, completely off to the side or to the rear or something like that, probably to the side. And I also, the other thing that I did that was a little bit different is where my fuel comes in, there is actually a hole in the plate that's provided, but it's rubbish, so I just drilled another hole back up into the van. You could potentially mount this into your actual tank. You could put this into your diesel tank, but apparently it's illegal in Australia, but you could do it. Not that I'm saying that you should do something illegal, but technically you could. And you wouldn't have to worry about having a second tank, because if you've got a diesel van like I have, you're already running a big tank, which is not that far away anyway. The other thing is I've got some fire retardant kind of sealant that goes around this, because you can't just put any old sealant around it. It needs to be fire retardant stuff, because it gets really, really hot. And the other thing is that there's a flange that you can put in the hole where you mount the actual diesel heater. So I am gonna tidy this all up and get that fire retardant stuff around it, but it would have been good to probably buy the flange, and maybe I'll order the flange and buy the flange. And these are things that you just don't know until you do the installation. You look at what other people are doing and listen to what other people say, and then kind of figure it out the hard way. Next thing here is my solar panel. So this is my solar panel, 300 watt solar panel. Basically 300 watts, I think it's 18 volt, and it produces about 16 amps via the charge controller. And I thought I'd show you a few things about this. So the panel itself I'm pretty happy with, monocrystalline solar panel, but the wire that it comes with is this pathetic stuff here. And this stuff is, what does it say it is? 2.5 mil. Well, 2.5 mil is too thin for a 16 amp panel. It's just ridiculous. Like, you need 6 mil for this, at least 6 mil for this installation, if you're going to get the full benefit of your solar panel. You're simply not going to get the full benefit of the solar panel with this thin 2.5 mil stuff. So what I've done is I've bought a much better quality Rhino-Rack cable, which is way heavier, and you can see it here. You can see the difference in size between these two. I mean, this is a 6 mil, and it's got a really good quality insulation. You can see, sort of looking down at how decent it is. it's just really, really, really good stuff. And this stuff is just really terrible. It just, you know, I mean, maybe this is UV rated or whatever. It sort of says it's got some ratings and things on the side of it, but I kind of doubt whether that is really what it's supposed to be. It just doesn't feel like it. It doesn't look like it, and it probably just isn't what it's supposed to be. So, and this is really important. You see, these cables. This is taking your load from your solar panel down to your charge controller, and if they're not thick enough, you're basically creating a resistance down the wire. And if you're creating a resistance down the wire, you're not going to get the full benefit of the actual output of the solar panel, and that just doesn't make sense. I mean, to spend the money on the solar panel and then have a useless hookup wire is pointless. So I would recommend, if you buy a panel, check the wiring, check what's on it, and buy the appropriate wiring, because it's not hugely expensive, and it makes a huge difference, especially if you've got a fairly long run like you generally have from a, you know, mid-top van or a high-top van. Now, the other things that this came with is, this is a charge controller that came with, and I thought I'd show these two charge controllers side by side, because it really shows the difference. So this is apparently a 30 amp charge controller, and I have my doubts as to whether you could even put 30 amps through that. Well, maybe you can, but it's pretty pathetic. It doesn't have any temperature control, so you have basically a battery hookup, the solar hookup, and then it has another output where you could run like a LED light or something like that. I forget how many amps it is. I think you could run, I think they said you could run up to 2.5 amps or 3 amps or something off this. I can't remember the exact rating, but it was something like that. You'd never use it. And the really important thing here is the terminals. The terminals are just tiny. So even if you had decent sized wiring here, you'd struggle to get it into these terminals, because these terminals are just useless. So that's probably one of the reasons they've used a thin wire, because the thin wire will go into there, whereas 6mm wire would be a struggle to get it into there, and certainly 8mm wire, if you're using 8mm, you just wouldn't get it in there. So what I did, so one other problem was that this is a PWA charge controller. So these are not super efficient. These are 68% efficient or something like that, and the rest of it's just lost basically in the charge controller. So I bought the Renogy Rover Elite here, and this is a 40 amp charge controller. And the reason I bought a 40 amp charge controller, because I thought to myself, if I decide that one solar panel is not enough, I could always buy a second solar panel. I'd still give me room with 16 amps, 2 lots of 16, 32. You know, that would control 2 panels, no problem at all, or 3. You know, three lots of 200 or something like that. I mean, there's lots of ways I could do it. So this just gives me the flexibility, and this is a way better charge controller. And aside from the size difference, it's just the fact that it's got proper heat sinking on this unit. As you can see here, so proper heat sink. This has got nothing, so I don't even know how this dissipates any heat that it generates. It probably just doesn't. It probably just gets wasted. But this can dissipate heat. You know, it can regulate itself properly. It's a proper decent charge controller. The terminals themselves are just way bigger, much better quality. Apparently on some of the Renogys, on some of the earlier models, they have problems with these, with the bolt down terminal connectors, but these ones look pretty good on this one. We've got another port on here which runs, I think it runs my wireless controller. So it's a Bluetooth wireless controller, and that I can check everything via my phone. And then this is really important, is the battery monitoring. So we have the ability to monitor the battery and monitor the temperature. So and that's really important, because we're in a hot climate here, as I said earlier, and you don't want to be charging your battery if it's like, you know, 90 degrees inside it or something like that. That would just be ridiculous, you know, like you'll end up destroying your batteries. And I just, from time to time, I'm reading about people saying, oh, I've got, you know, bulging on the side of my battery, what's going wrong with it? And it's probably just been charged in the wrong conditions, or charged the wrong way. And these controllers are just way better at doing it. And the other thing with the MPPT charge controller is that it's, I think it's 98% efficient, so it's incredibly more efficient than this silly little toy here. So it doesn't make sense to use one of these, really. Well, to me, I mean, this is probably okay if you just got a really light application. So if you're just running a few lights inside your van or something like that, you're not running a fridge and you're not running anything major, this is probably okay. But for someone who wants to get a little bit more serious like me, like I want a decent sound system inside my van, and I'm going to be running my dual zone fridge, and there's various other things that I want to be able to run, you know, laptop and screens and other bits and pieces and pumps and things. So I need I needed a reasonable charge controller that could you know, do the job properly, where I could get the maximum benefit from my solar panel, and so that's what I've done, is I've gone that way. I've got solar hookup wire here as well. So this wire is again 6 gauge. This would go between the solar charge controller and the batteries. And then I've got some Rhino-Rack connectors here to connect the actual panel onto the roof. So this comes with everything you need here. It's a pretty good setup. It's got all the bolts, all the washers, stainless stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of the setup. That's where I'm at. The other thing I've done over here is I've cut an old roof rack rail in half because it's pretty solid, and I had it and I only had one, so I've cut this in half and I've just finished painting it, and I'm going to use this to help mount the solar panel because this is really good and solid. And I'll bolt this onto my roof rack system with the solar panel mounted on that. Well, that's the idea anyway at the moment, so I'm going to get into it now, experiment with a little bit, and see what I can do. Hopefully I can get this thing set up. I'm thinking at the moment to mount the solar panel towards the front, between the front racks here, just here and here. I wanted it I think the reason I wanted it at the front is because I have a carriage rack here as well. And the rack's got to go somewhere, and I'd rather have the rack, I think I'd rather have the rack at the back, because I'm thinking to get a ladder to go up the back of the van so you can get up onto the roof and get at all this kind of stuff easily. And the other thing then is I'd be able to maintain the panels because I'd have the rack up there, and I could, you know, put a bit of wood in it and sit in it when I'm cleaning the panels and things like that. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That's my thinking on the installation. I'm no expert at this stuff, but I've been kind of learning as I go. But you know, I have an electronics background, so I know a little bit about, you know, electricity and how to hook things up. So I'm not really going to struggle with that side of it. It was just that the technology behind it, you know, the charge controllers and learning about the charge controllers was kind of new to me because I haven't had to do that stuff before, and you know, the battery technologies as well. I decided not to go with lithium-ion, well, for a couple of reasons. One is cost. It's expensive for a decent battery, like really expensive. And the other thing was that, they have a problem with temperature. So when you start charging lithium-ion batteries in 46 plus degree heat, it changes the chemistry of the battery, and the battery just doesn't last. So you know, I mean, it could get pretty hot inside a van. Even with insulation, I think it would get pretty warm, and I think you could have a problem with the batteries. So I don't know whether that was a good decision at this stage. Lots of people are jumping on the lithium-ion wagon, but I think that, you know, in Queensland certainly we're not really going to see the outcome of battery failures really probably for a couple of years, because it's you know, even though it's not a really new technology, it's new to a lot of caravan and van installations. So I think we just have to wait and see, and I'm prepared, you know, for the price of the batteries that I paid. I think that it was better to go AGM for the moment and watch over the next couple of years what happens. And if you know, they're going to get cheaper too. That's the other thing. They're going to get cheaper. They're going to get better. They're looking at ways to overcome these problems with the batteries, the heat, or the heat charging issues. So I'm going to wait and see, and I think I'm just going to sit on the sideline until something better comes along or something better happens. That's my thinking for now anyway. So I'll get stuck into the job and I'll come back to you guys when I'm a little bit further along. Okay, so I've encountered the first of my hurdles, which is getting new solar connectors onto the end of here, MC4 connectors. So you buy these, you know, you can just buy these basically as sets. I took the old ones off here, and I was hoping that I would be able to utilize these, but no, once they're crimped inside, that's kind of the end of them. I'll show you the crimp that was on these. That's what a really decent crimp looks like with the proper crimper tool. Of course, you know, many of us don't have the proper crimper tool. And not having the proper tool, of course, is a little bit off-putting, because you think to yourself, well, maybe I can't actually do the job. But I've sort of figured out that you can. So what I'm using is one of these. This is about a 50 bucks worth of tool. You can see it there. And I'm using the smallest setting in here to crimp this. This is not perfect, but it seems to be producing a pretty good crimp. This is the other crimping tool. This would be typically for doing automotive type crimping connections. You can buy a cheap version of these, but the cheap version of these is useless, so I don't recommend that you ever buy one of those because they're just rubbish. But what that crimps is these type of connectors here. And you know, typically you're going to need this stuff if you're doing any sort of installation, unless you're going to solder everything together, which I don't think you do. Generally you're going to be crimping things as well, so you need the crimper tool. But you need to be able to put these kind of plugs together. You need to be able to do this, these MC4 connectors. And so you've got to trim your wire back, and this has got to go on the end, and then you trim about 1 inch off this, of the sheathing off this, which is easy to do. I can just do that with a razor knife. You can get a tool for doing that as well. I haven't got the tool. And then the thing is, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to crimp. You want to be able to crimp this. And you've got to do it the right way, otherwise you won't produce a good crimp. These annoying flies around now. We're getting into that silly season where Queensland we get those horrible little buzzy flies that fly around your head. They're not like normal flies that you swat away and go away. These are flies that are persistently annoying, and they make a whole heap of noise, and they fly right around your ear hole usually. But this is not a nature show, so we won't talk about them anymore, except for that they're annoying. Okay, so you just carefully cut around. You don't want to cut your actual wires inside here as well. You just want to cut just the insulation. And it might hold on a little bit like it is here. And you just touch it with the razor blade, it pretty much soon. It soon comes away. And then it should just pull off with a little bit of effort. Or with a lot of effort, maybe. Okay, it's off, and I'll just give that a slight twist to keep those wires nice and tidy. Make sure I haven't stripped too much off, which I probably have in this case. So you know that's too much. We need a little bit less than that. So we'll chop the end off that and clean that up. Yeah, it makes a mess. Okay, and that's it. You just want it to sit in there like that. You want it to basically go through. Well, you could solder this into here as well if you wanted to be really serious about this. Now the other thing is, don't forget before you do this to put all the ends on in the correct order. You know, the end cap and the tightening kind of thing, and the rubber grommet. Because if you don't put these on, obviously, and you crimp it on, then you're going to buy another connector, and it happens, of course. So yeah, now I can put this into the crimper tool. Let's hope that I do this the right way, so that we show you something proper rather than something nonsense. Okay, so I've got that in there ready to crimp. Okay, so that's into there now, and now I can, no, I won't. Yeah, make sure all the strands go on. So see, I'm getting a bit of a problem here with the strands. I'm not wanting to behave properly and go in there. We want all those strands inside that connector. We don't. Okay, they're all in there now. And now hopefully you can see as I do this. You probably can't because it's probably too dark, but and this is what happens with cheap tools, of course, is see the handles coming off. Useless. Probably just pull these handles off and throw them away, or glue them on or something like that. But that's what happens with cheap tools. You buy a really good one, that won't happen. And you can see it's done a sort of half decent job there, but now what we want to do is we want to crimp these ends down just a little bit more. So we turn it over the other way and put it back in and do it again. And that's crimped it down. That's pretty good now. That's pretty solidly in there. That's not ever coming off. And that's all we needed. And then it's just a matter of screwing the whole thing together. So it goes in. Because I'm using 6-gauge wire, it's a very, very tight fit. Or I shouldn't say 6-gauge, I should say 6mm wire. It's quite thick. And this little rubber thing here doesn't really want to go in there very nicely. You sort of have to squeeze it in manually around the edges. But it will fit and it will go in. just a little bit stubborn. Because that's the sealer, so basically it's in there now. And this bit going over the edge of that, again, this is difficult to get on as well. I kind of have to twist it a little bit because it's the wire's thick and it's almost at a verge where it doesn't want to quite go on. And that's it there. And now the screw should come up. We should be able to screw that on, which we can, which is nice. One other thing I've done with these wires too is I've marked my positive wire. I mean, you should always know which one your positive wire is basically, but I've marked them. So this is my positive wire. It's positive to negative or something like that on these Anderson connectors. So negative is going to come onto there. That's why the red's there. But it's good to it's good to mark it with a bit of heat shrink or something like that, because then you know that's your positive coming out of your solar panel, because you need that to know that for your solar charge controller. And that's it, job done. So now we've got decent connector wire on the solar panel. This is the other thing I've got, is this gland that's going to go on the roof of my van. So it comes with all the connectors. So basically your wires go through there. It's got rubber grommets and stuff in there. The idea is you screw that through there. And on the inside of here you'd put some RTV silicone around the outside, drill the holes through your roof, put some grommets in your roof, and then when you clunk that down with the RTV silicone in there, no water should be able to get into your van, because you don't want water entering your van via this. So that's how that works. So that's a job that we've got to do shortly. Okay, I've finally got the panel mounted up on the roof now. It's been a bit of a mission. I had to, a few trial fits and things, but I'm pretty happy with it. So I'll show you what I've done. So this is the panel, and what I did is I used, as I sort of showed you this morning, I used the Rhino-Rack cut in half. It's pretty solid. Used the Renogy mounts that came with the solar panel, and the whole thing's mounted up there and it's really good and strong. I'm pretty happy. What I did with the bottom to mount it into the Rhino-Rack is actually the Rhino-Rack mounting system, and I had a spare one, and I've used the bolts and the mounts that actually kind of swivel into the bottom of this and clip into it, so that made that part of the job really easy for me too. But I mean, you could have bolted it in there, but that way was definitely easier. So pretty happy. So that's my 300 watt solar panel on the roof. Tomorrow I've got to get up here, put the gland in the roof, and finish this job off, start getting the wiring done on the inside of this vehicle, which will be great. And the other thing I've got, which is sort of over in the background there, is I've got a roof mount rack system that's going to go up here as well. And at the back here, where we have this area, this raised area, this is where my Dometic is going to go as well, my Dometic skylight, or vent system. So looking forward to getting that done. So that's pretty much it. The day's work is done for me. Once again, running out of light. I need 48-hour days, 12-hour days just don't suit me, and 8 hours at it here or whatever it's been, or 10 hours is never enough. It's always too short. But I'm happy that I've got this part of it done, because this was a major thing to get done, and I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the install. So tomorrow's another day. As I say, I have to get onto the rest of the wiring tomorrow, which will be great.